Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to this session. I'm really excited to introduce Dominic to you. Now, Dominic and I met over LinkedIn about a month or so back and discovered we had a lot of things in common in the work that we do. We're both total geeks about neuroscience and emotional intelligence and resilience and change. And Dominic interviewed me for his podcast just recently, and so we're here to talk about Dominic's book, which is amazing. I was just telling him that one of my 2.5-year-old grandsons has been through it and looked at all the pictures, so it's now got sticky fingerprints through it, but that's all right. I'm going to treasure it anyway. So we're here to talk about Dominic's book. Like I said, we found we had a lot in common, and there's so many things we could talk about on the podcast. After we finished recording, we both agreed we could have talked for hours because there's so many things to discuss. So we're continuing the conversation here, which I'm really excited to be here. So Dominic, if you just maybe want to give us a little bit of a brief introduction, a little bit of a career history, and then talk about that defining moment that you had, which really shifted everything for you when you had to, a huge redundancy in your team.
Wow. Well, firstly, Ros, thank you so much for the honor of being here. I'm so used to being on the other side of the mic, and to be invited to be a guest is an honor that I don't take lightly. But certainly, we wrote the book to touch lives, and you allowing us to have a channel to reach even more with our what I believe is really important work, the work that you and I do to empower people to be their most adaptable, resilient self, and to give hope during these times of constant change and disruption is so important. I started off as a very introverted, shy IT geek. I grew up in Malaysia, lived in this beautiful country 42 years now, and yet very conservative upbringing, traditionalist parents, teachers who always told their 4 sons, no money to leave you, no business to leave you. All we can do is give you the education we could never afford for ourselves. University education in Australia was their dream for their 4 sons. It was their Everest. So anyway, I chose computer science because I used to be a person who was much more comfortable with machines than with people. I've always loved people. And yet I felt very insecure around them, always worried about running out of things to say, felt very disingenuous with the small talk. And so I kind of was very polite. I would be the last person to reach out to people. So I chose computer science because I also idolized my dad. He was a math teacher. And I must admit that when I finished my HSC A levels, I'm like, what do I do next year? And then one of my friends said to me, hey, do computers because you're a very logical thinker, he says. And I didn't even know what computers was. And so I did computer science, completed the degree, and then it was just like head down, bum up, climb the corporate ladder, and your life will be sweet. And by year 2001, I was senior manager at this place called IBM, and running an amazing team that had the privilege of also building the Olympic Games result system. The website we built that year made it to the Guinness Book of World Records. It was amazing. But anyway, you can imagine my shock and surprise when I got that call that morning to be told I was losing 30% of my team to an organizational restructure. And yeah, I must admit being in shock, as we all do when we get the news. I had spent 13 years of my first career in a very small Australian startup, helped that company grow from 2 to 40 people. Had always read about restructures, but only in the textbooks, downsizing, right sizing. And so it was it was my very first encounter of being kind of, even though I wasn't tapped on the shoulder, yeah, I suddenly lost 30% of my team. And I still remember being in shock. And then, a million questions go to your mind. Your next emotion was shame, embarrassment, all the mini traumas that I have about being told to stand on the chair when I got the answer wrong in class, right? It was almost like I failed. My Asia Pacific director, my boss's boss, called me up and broke the news to me over the phone. Mate, I've decided to restructure your organization. You're losing 30% of your team today. That was all he
Wow,
said. Nothing I
that's
need you to do.
brutal.
Yeah. And I've lined up 3 HR partners, one in Sydney, one in Brisbane, one in Darwin. I've picked the 30%. They'll be walked one at a time to a room at 9 o'clock. They'll be told they have 6 weeks to look through our portal, find another role, apply for. They will have to interview for their roles. Failure to find a role, they're given a letter detailing the terms of their payout. I need you to sit tight. Not sure what I'm going to do with you yet. Any questions?
Mm.
That was how
That's a
it was
rough way
done.
to find out, isn't it? That's a, you know, how did it, yeah, I mean, you talked about self-doubt and anxiety, and I can only imagine what it would have been like. So, was there a turning point for you where you sort of shifted from that really negative space into something much more positive? And what happened?
Absolutely. You go through that shock, that shame, and then that guilt, all the things that I subsequently learned, the grief curve that people go through when they go through change. I certainly went through all of that, and then I remember pressing the snooze button too many times in those 2 dark years. It was 2 dark years. I struggled to get out of bed. It was a very unfamiliar situation for me because I was like, I'm employed and yet I'm not sure what I'm meant to do. I'm no longer a senior manager. I don't have anyone reporting to me. They've taken that away from me. I'm just here to sit tight. And it was just a very awkward situation to go to work, not clear about what you're meant to do. And me being a condition in my growing up days to be a follower, do what you're told, and there was not a lot of communication for months. So it was a tiring time and all of that. And yet, as they always say, in your darkest hours, there's always a shining light. Attending a program on personal development, on growing myself, being clear about my destiny with this wonderful guy by the name of Tony Robbins, someone that I had been a huge fan of, read his books, and yet never seen him live. Attended that program with my wife, would be life changing. I think the key message I still remember the first day when he stood on stage, and I was here with 3,000 people there, and it was like he was speaking to me personally. It was like one of his quotes: "It's not the blowing of the wind, it's the setting of the sail that determines where you end up in life." A quote by the late Jim Rohn, who's one of Tony's mentors. And he says, the wind is like change, it blows on all of us. And yet we can't change the change. Focus your energies entirely on the things you have control over, and that's setting the sail. And challenge, and in that was the turning point for me, really, really to focus on, I can't change the wind, but I can set the sail and be very clear, get away from the weeds. I used to be a very task-oriented engineer, which meant I woke up every morning asking the question, what do I need to do? And he got me literally to go on a drone, get up high and say, many years from now, looking back, what will cause for you to say you've had an extraordinary career? One of the key things he says, Dom, when everything else is taken away from you, there's one thing no one can ever take away from you, and that's the power to choose your response. It's in the moments of your decisions that your destiny is shaped, he says to me. From your date of birth to this second, the decisions you've made doesn't decide what tonight will be like, next week, next year, for the rest of your career, but the decisions you make from today. And he says, Dom, do you have a good career or extraordinary? I say good at best. Good life or extraordinary? Good at best. He says, Dom, good energy or extraordinary? I say good at best. Good relationships or extraordinary? I say good at best. He says, mate, you have but one life, maybe 2 or 3 careers. No one but you is going to make your life, your career extraordinary for you but you. He says, should you decide to be the captain of your ship, first decision, decide in advance to make it extraordinary. Decide in advance what extraordinary looks like in your career. Make your career one of impact. He says you could choose between impact and success measured by the traditional measures of title, money, where you live, etc., etc. Many years from now, looking back, what would you like most to be remembered? I say impact. I didn't want to be a date of birth, date of death, gone. That's it, right? And so I decided many years from now, looking back, I decided that day that I wanted to be remembered as a person who inspired my 3 wonderful children. They were all young at that time, to live their best lives, to find fulfillment through their lives and through their career by using their unique talents to make the biggest difference to the lives of people who honored them. And I wanted to do it with authenticity. I learned that day I have a real passion for workplace culture. Yeah, how people feel about coming to work each and every day affects their performance, their productivity, their moods and vibes they bring home to their families. And so that was a big turning point for me. I decided that day I saw a new vision. I wanted to touch at least 1 million lives in my work before my time's up. Thank you so much for joining us here today. You're part of that mission. And that journey, starting with that single decision to be the captain of my ship, has just made my life an extraordinary journey, one of growing purposefully each and every day, knowing that I'm perfect in my imperfection, to help other people find fulfillment through their careers and in their lives as well, and in the world, in the process, make the world an even better place. Anyway, I hope that
I
helps.
love that. I love the distinction between impact and success. That's such a beautiful way to think of it, isn't it? You know, rather than being a successful person, be somebody who's created impact. Now, you've described yourself as being an introverted, shy IT geek. So, and obviously now you've shifted to becoming an international speaker and coach. What's been the shift for you? I mean, there's obviously a big difference between somebody who you said, you know, would just rather not have been in the spotlight, to somebody who now, you know, that's your life essentially. So, what was the change for you?
I think the key thing is, when you get a coach and they help you with your mission, your purpose, your higher purpose, your values, understanding what matters most to me. When back in the day, when it was like opening up my brain to understand what was shaping my emotions, my actions, and my results, I realized that I was very certainty driven. I wanted to feel very secure, very into survival, very safe, and very important. That was what drove me, and I wanted to be loved and respected. And yet, I think the leader said to me, Dom, the greatest failure in life is to be successful and unfulfilled. The greatest failure in life is to be successful and unfulfilled. And that hit me like a gut punch. And what does fulfillment really mean? Fulfilling your highest potential in this lifetime, finding and realizing it, self-actualization, right, in the course of making a difference in your own unique way. So I realized that if I really authentically wanted to experience fulfillment and pass this on to others, I had to be a model of embracing vulnerability, to not be addicted to my comfort zone, my job, my position, don't mess with my routines, to someone who had a really clear vision and knew that in order to get there, I had to grow myself, to pivot. For instance, if I really wanted to touch 1 million lives with my work, I couldn't do the operational stuff at IBM better or more, because whilst I was very comfortable doing that, the thing that's really uncomfortable is doing this. 20 years ago, this would be like, whoa, last person to put up my hand to do a presentation, etc., etc. But I always, I think Tony says to me, if you are serious about achieving your goal, live by this mantra. If I can't, I must. And if I must, I can. So every time my brain would say, if this is my last day at IBM, what's the single biggest thing I could do to make the biggest difference to the lives of the people who honored me? When I changed the question from what do I need to do today to if today is my last day here, what's the single most important thing I can do for my team to honor them today? And the answer was teach them what you've learned. And then my brain would say, but you're not qualified. You don't have expertise. You don't have credibility. And I've learned at that stage that that's the clue that your brain is trying to get you into survival comfort mode. Choose growth mode, grow purposefully. And even though my heart will be beating on my chest, I'll say yes to that. I scheduled a brown bag session next Tuesday. Many people have started to observe my energy after the workshops. It was like, instead of coming in and with a frown and serious demeanor, I was coming in with a big smile and energy and positivity, knowing that no one was going to make me feel that way but me. And they were asking, what the heck are you on? And I said, well, if you really want to learn, next Tuesday, brown bag lunch, come along. I'll share with you some of the key things that I've learned about emotional intelligence and learning about the brain, neuroscience, and how it works, and to really thrive and flourish through times of change and uncertainty. And, it was one of those rare occasions. I'm used to be the ready, aim, ready, aim, ready, aim, and then finally fire kind of game. Guy, very conservative, planner, don't take risks, don't make mistakes, massive fear of failure. But when I learned that to be an entrepreneur, to be someone who really touches lives and expands that, I needed to be ready, fire, aim, ready, fire, aim. Just go out there, give it your best, serve with authenticity. It will never be perfect. Learn to make the next one even better. So I just did that when people said, yes, thank Dom, I'm coming along. Funnily enough, your content is ready. You give it your very best. And everyone was like, Dom, you really need to do this. You're meant to do this. I'm like, okay, that wasn't the plan. I just woke up one morning to say, if this is my last day here, how can I make a difference? And can we do this once a month? They said, and it became a monthly thing, right? And all of a sudden, I was drawing a crowd at IBM. Tuesday brown bag sessions once a month with Dom, and would be a thing. And then I found myself just looking forward to that 1 hour per month. That was the highlight of my month. I was already starting to flourish in my new role. Operations director was my new role then, and yet this was the highlight of my month. And I decided this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So two things I think. One, I could have chosen to leave and go out there and start to do more training on leaders and emotional intelligence and gotten an employment. And yet I knew that being an entrepreneur would really push me outside my comfort zone to learn how to deal with uncertainty each and every day because I had become addicted to the paycheck, to the regularness of that. And the best way I could learn to overcome that was actually through experience. So I chose the more difficult route, I must admit, more because I wanted to learn fast and also be a role model to my kids. But clearly, when you do that, as you know, Ross, when you go through this journey, the business planning, the risk management, the backup plan, all of that went into the equation. And then when you weigh it up and you say, hey, what's the worst can happen? What's the risk mitigation plan? But what's the best that could happen? You see that the benefits really outweigh the mitigated risk element. And yeah, life has never been the same again. So really, it's that choosing courage, choosing vulnerability, and yet living. I think one of the things I learned in my leadership journey is the difference between integrity and values. I used to think that integrity, confuse it with honesty, telling the truth, and all that stuff. But really, integrity is living in line with your what you believe in, your core values, especially under pressure. And so, for me, integrity has played a massive role. Wanting to, at the end of the day, be able to look in the mirror at the end of every night, at the end of my life, to say, have you done your very best to live authentically so that you can be that great role model to your kids, is what drives me a lot. Yeah. But of course, the other equation that I must share with you that Tony challenged us to do was, he says, Dom, the easiest way to be the best version of you is to lift your standards, turn ors into ends. As a software engineer, I've learned about programming. There's ors and ends, booleans, and all that kind of stuff. He says, and very often in my old state, I used to think I can have a good work or good life, not both, right? And when he says to me, the best of the best of the best, you choose. How do not settle until you found the answer to how can I have an amazing career that fulfills me and do it with people that I love and travel and see the world and make a decent living from it and inspire my children and build amazing relationships, not one or the other, turn it into an end. And do not settle until you find the sweet spot and pursue it with all your might. And yeah, just happened to have the blessing of finding it, and life has really never been the same again.
I love that. There's two main things I took out of what you were saying there. The first one was around that saying yes to things even when they're a bit scary, because I certainly know as an entrepreneur myself, that's our life, isn't it? You say yes to a lot of things that are quite scary. And the other one is that, and the and or. You think you've got to choose between two things, but in fact you can have both. So it's expanding the
Absolutely.
world out of, here's my narrow version of what success looks like into it could be anything you want it to be. So yeah, love that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, with your book, the title, What's Great About This, if somebody's going through redundancy, going, what's great about this could be quite provocative. So why did you choose that particular title as the theme for the book?
I think just wonderful coaching. Well, firstly, that question had made a profound impact in my life. I think one of the key things I realized that it wasn't the situation, the retrenchment, whatever it is, whatever that we associate negativity with our lives that affected my emotions. It was the meaning I had given to that situation. So I think one of the things I learned is your quality of your life is the quality of the evaluations of situations. Everything that happens around us, whether it's COVID, whether it's tariffs, whether it's someone you getting scams, you getting tapped on the shoulder, or even being diagnosed with fourth-stage cancer. None of it has meaning apart from the meaning that you give it. But the meaning you give it affects how you feel about it, affects your actions, and affects your results, right? And so when I went back into the meaning, I realized what's the meaning I'm giving to this retrenchment? I failed. I've let my team down. I'm not good enough. The old fake imposter syndrome all came up. One day they'll find out that I'm not that great and I've been found out. So it was really, I was ruminating over the meaning, right? But the meaning often is a result of the question I was conditioned to ask. And I was asking this question incessantly. Why did that happen? Why did that happen? Why is this happening? So I want you to imagine an event occurs, your brain is processing it, and it goes into why is that happen? Your brain is your slave. It will come up with answers. The problem is the answers are incredibly disempowering, right? And the answers are things like the company doesn't care, you're only a number, you thought you were important, you're a fool, and those were the answers were what was making me feel disempowered. When I learned that I could change my experience, my how I felt about that situation simply by changing the question. And the question I used was, what's great about this? What's great about this? Now, every situation is a bit like a bottle of water here is both half full and half empty. Every situation in our life, whether it's a human being or an event, right, uh, is both a problem and an opportunity, and it's not to be in denial of either. And because the brain has a negatively bias, it tends to go who took half as opposed to who left me half. So knowing that in order to support my ideal outcome, I can't change the change, but I can shape where I want to get to. I first need to create that positive energy, whether it's gratitude and inspiration and courage that will fuel the courageous actions I need to take to get there. And it starts with changing the meaning of the situation. So just focusing on who left me half, right? And really the question that helps me with that is what's great about this situation? And when I ruminated on that, it was like, man, if not for that phone call 2 years ago, I wouldn't be here in this workshop learning about emotional intelligence. I wish I had learned this 20 years ago. I can now pass this on to my kids. What else is great about this? Well, 3 or 4 of my team who had pivoted quickly and magnificently to learn that had become went from technical specialists to e-business consultants. They're now traveling around the world. They're even higher sought after. I said, what else is great about this? My relationship with my kids, my joy, my energy has gone to another level. And truth be told, before I got tapped on the shoulder, or the situation that affected my team, I was having a good career, not an extraordinary one. It was comfortable, but I wasn't flourishing really. And I realized that if not for that incident, I wouldn't have been desperate enough to spend 4 days in an event. And all of a sudden, when I thought about that incident and I thought about that human being that gave me that call that changed my life, I realized that was an angel sent from above to wake me up to say, son, you're meant to be more. Mate, don't stay in your comfort zone. You're meant to flourish, not be in survival mode. And so that question was very meaningful for me. My original title of the book was the secondary title, How to Be Resilient and Thrive Through Disruption and Change. And but it's a boring title, let's face it. And my son, my eldest son, happens to be an amazing musician and composer. And I was dabbling with the title of the book, and my son says, Dad, whenever people attend your workshops, months, weeks, years later, when they see you and they smile, what do they say to you? And it's always, Dom, thank you for teaching me what's great about this. I wake up with that question every morning. Every time I'm faced with great uncertainty, I take a deep breath and say, what's great about this? It's changed my life. So I use that as the primary question for my title because it resonated with me, and my son said it will pick more interest. So anyway, I hope you like the title, Ross.
I do. I love it. Yeah.
Uh,
I sort of, reflecting on the title of my own book and going, oh, that's a bit boring, isn't it? Better come
no,
up with
not at
something
all, not at all.
exciting. So, for people going through disruption right now, and let's face it,
Yeah,
the world is full of disruption. Most organisations have got change going on. You don't bump into anyone these days who says, life's pretty boring. Nothing much is happening for me. It's always disruption. What's the very first step that people can take to shift themselves from fear and resistance into possibility?
thank you. Well, firstly, it's just to realize that change is a constant, and as humans, we we are born to grow, to flourish. We want our children's lives to be even better than ours and the next generation. So change is just here to stay, whether it's AI or whatever it is, and invariably. So, firstly, focus your energies on the things you have control over. Change is just see change as an opportunity. So, for me, it's about whenever you are in fear, denial, anxiety, firstly, reassure yourself nothing wrong with you. Your brain is putting you in survival mode. Totally okay. Is that overprotective parent sometimes, but many changes in our life are not life threatening, right? Fear is amazing. If a car is coming at me at 100 miles per hour and fear gets me out of the way, amazing. But because our brain over 60,000 years hasn't really adapted, it still thinks a restructure, being scammed, uh, a lot of stuff. Even today, you know, I'm not downplaying it. Cancer is so curable in many, many situations because of the advances of medical science, for instance, that very often when we are over marinating in cortisol, stress, and all that, it doesn't help us with our recovery, right? So, really, it's about being mindful that the brain puts us in fear, and through very quick conditioning of your mind, to have a pattern interrupt. So the people are incredibly optimistic. The same stuff happens to them, except that you'll find that they have the ability to just take a deep breath, smile, and instantly focus on solution, not problems, not dwell and marinate on the problems, but to say, what's the opportunity here? What's great about this? What's the positive lesson? What do I really want? I can't change the blowing of the wind, but I can be a better sailor, right? Sail the stormy seas, but I can set the path, right? I can, but it starts first with taking that. Firstly, ask what's great about this. There's a great pattern interrupt because immediately you're seeing opportunities, and then from a position of gratitude, ask what do I really want. I can't change the change, but see further out, 3 months, 1 year, 2 years from now, what would make me look back and say extraordinary? And then based on that, what can I do today? What would love do today? And love, I use love as a general uh, label for emotions like empowerment and positivity and optimism and joy and energy giving stage, right? What would love do? And whatever the answer is, take that step one day at a time, make progress. So make a mantra that progress is success. So each and every day is not about getting to the top. It's not about reaching the top of the mountain. It's about doing the climb and growing purposefully so that we find purpose and meaning in every adversity. Anyway, that would be my 2 cents. Break the pattern, shift out of it, be optimistic, believe that things happen for me, not at me. And this is the pattern that I find with people who are incredibly resilient. They really believe that even though it may not feel like it right now, it will be obvious in the near future why this was meant to happen. And just move forward with great optimism.
I love that. My grandfather was probably the most resilient person I ever known. And his attitude was very much like that. You know, he lost his leg, was shot down, lost his leg during World War II, but went on to have an amazing career. And he used to, you know, people said to him, you know, it must have been awful to lose your leg. He said, well, yes, it was. But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have, you know, achieved all of these other things. So it was very much that sort of always the positive slant on life. Now, the
Mhm.
book's got action plans and reflections, or, you know, dotted through it at the end of the chapters. Can you share one tool or practice that is probably your favorite and has the biggest impact for you?
Thank you so much. Well, you know, one of the key things that I learned is the mind, the brain is a muscle, right? And there are two parts of the brain. The left brain is the rational brain, the thinking brain, the problem-solving brain, and the right brain is where emotional intelligence is, which is the realm of resilience, being self-aware, amazing with self-regulation, setting the path, inspiration. All of that is right brain, empathy, trust, influence, yeah. And so for me, because I realized that up to maybe 2001, I had spent a lot of time with my bachelor's degree, master's degree. All the courses I used to attend up to 2001 were technical in nature. It was like going to a gym and working on your left bicep. It was decent. My problem solving skills were decent, right? But if you can't deal with disappointment and heartbreak and humiliation and you can't shift that around, what's the point, right? You can have the best IQ in the world, but if your emotional quotient, your self-awareness and self-regulation, which I was severely lacking at that time, is not great, right? So when I learned that IQ multiplied by EQ, great problem solving skills multiplied by, right, amazing resilience, amazing positivity, the ability to earn the trust of others, to lead self, others, and influence through the best of your ability for the greater good. I just endeavored and consciously work on strengthening the right brain so that I have better balance. So a practice that I have regularly that I've cultivated that's changed my life is really asking the title of the book very often. I wake up in the morning and instead of asking what do I need to do today for the last 21 years, the question has been what's great about my life today? And just a minute of that, I feel like I'm the luckiest human being in the universe, right? And then what will make today extraordinary in the context of living in line with my mission, with my purpose, and what would love do? What would love prioritize? And just give it my all. And I find that I do that a lot. I came in the car, I came in the train, in the commute. What's great about my life? After every workshop, what's great about that? And you'll find that, ironically, when incidents do happen, you know, during COVID, it was a late evening when I was driving through an intersection, 45 kilometers per hour, and I was T-boned, right? A car smashed. And literally in the split seconds before I was hit, it was very instructive. I can still remember feeling just very calm. And I was like, what do I do? Slam on the brakes, accelerate. I have no idea which one is better. So my first act was just total surrender. If it's to be, it is up to me. Everything will be fine. And really, in that moment when my car got hit and the car spun around, I seriously wasn't anxious. I wasn't tense. I wasn't in anxiety mode. I was just imagining that I was in a playground, there'd be the Dodgem cars, having a lot of fun, okay, and just waiting for it to stop. And the moment it stopped, airbags out, all that stuff, my first emotion was gratitude. I said, what's great about this? And it was like, hey, I'm insured. I'm alive. Thank God for my seatbelt and my airbags. And an instant, and I believe that calm rather than trauma or anxiety or is due to conditioning. It's that muscle you've conditioned again and again and again and again. Every time you're faced with challenge and adversity. What's great about this? If the brain says nothing's great about this, ask what could be great about this. Assume that this is something that works for you. The universe only sends things that will serve you. It may not be evident right now, it will be evident in the future. But that practice, so if there's one practice, it would be the practice of gratitude mindfulness. Yeah, just regularly asking, what's great about my life? Find out 10 things. What's great about my children? What's great about my career? What's great about tomorrow? All of you will be part of that rumination. And just fill your life with gratitude and journal it. I think that's a great practice. And go beyond that. Very often, when I do think of what's great about my life, is often about people. Go to the next step and express that gratitude. So I used to be a person that loved people, appreciated them, but I really wasn't expressing it enough. And when I learned that appreciating someone without expressing it is a little bit like wrapping up a gift and not giving it. So learning to be more expressive, authentically, spontaneously. And that has changed every dimension in my life. It's filled my life with gratitude, which is a great emotion to have a lot of the time. And people say to me, Dom, how the heck do you know about what fulfillment is? I think if I were to connect it with an emotion, it would be gratitude, right? And I'm not talking about, hey, Coca-Cola, yeah, feeling great, coffee, moment of happiness, but really a deep sense of, geez, a deep sense of gratitude, contentment, and of course, when you do make it a very authentic part of your practice to express gratitude to others, you can't help but, it's like karma, it comes back to you. People feel more secure with you. You have even better relationships because you're always seeing the gift in others. Yeah, you're always celebrating the strengths that everyone brings rather than magnifying their weaknesses. And who doesn't want that? Because all of us have that fear of being judged, right? Yeah. And so, anyway, that would be my 2 cents. Can you hear me, Ross?
Yeah, sorry, I think my internet might have dropped out for a moment. Everything,
Oh,
everyone froze, and I figured it was me
oh.
because everyone's frozen. And I kind of went, that's obviously me. Sorry to, yeah, I hope you got to
That's
you're
okay.
right in the middle of the gratitude piece. I was going to say, I find that so interesting because there's neuroscience studies show us that gratitude literally changes the brain. It grows all the parts of your brain which are around optimism and positivity, and it enables you to manage your emotions more effectively. So I love that that's a real living example of
Mhm.
how that actually works in practice. Somebody who says, I've done this and I can show you how it actually works. I love the sort of lived experience of it.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to turn to sort of the organisational context again. So if you've got leaders who are going through disruption with their team, look, it really is the new normal, like we said, for people. How can leaders help their teams not only just cope with change, but thrive?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ross. Well, firstly, they say it's never personal. I think the first thing is when I'm on the receiving end of change and disruption and I'm in shock, always I always teach others to say it's never personal. And yet, as a leader, it is important for us to realize for that person who's going through it, it feels personal, right? You didn't consult them, da 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 da. So very often that it's about leaders have such a tough decision to make because a role of a leader is to always put the needs of the organization first. If the team wins, the individuals win. The irony is you got to put the team first, right? So if an organization is not pivoting quickly and being competitive in a system where, let's face it, capitalist meritocracy, that's what our foundation of the contemporary systems we're in is all about. Meritocracy, fairness, based and it's a capitalist society, right? So leaders when they're leading with change, do it with compassion, show the data, tell why. I think the context is really important. When I was told, Dom, you're losing 30% to a team, to an organizational restructure, I wasn't told why. And I didn't have the courage. I didn't feel safe to ask why. So, one, for leaders, build a culture where people are going to ask questions, make it safe for them to do so, right? Create a safe platform, involve them, help them see the context leading up to why a certain conversation was made. In fact, empower them by giving them the context and saying, what would you do if you're the owner of this business? What would you do in this situation? If your role is to look after this team here, they'll generally come up with the same conclusions. We've got to make this change. So, what support do you need to help us pivot quickly? And the key is quickly because speed is of the essence, right? And today, so what support do you need? So lead from the front. So share the context, make sure you have a clear vision. Where are we headed? Make sure it inspires them, make sure they can see what's in it for them, and then say, what tools do you need to support us, because we got to get there quick. And for them to be very clear about what are the consequences on our organization and our team if we are not pivoting quickly enough, and what are the benefits if we do. So part of the role of a leader is not just be a manager with a title, but really to lead with clear vision, clear purpose, engagement, empowering your team, and help your people be intrinsically inspired by involving them in the process to move forward quickly. But again, not wait for change to happen like this. For leaders to also observe whenever things are in very comfortable mode, things are very cruising along. The great leaders today, they're not comfortable being comfortable. They know that if I do not move, if I do not initiate change, the tsunami will come. So I want to be the change. I do not want to be reactive about change. So constantly cultivating the growth mindset in their teams, in daily endeavors, by saying, how can we make time consciously to work on the business? What can we do even better? What can we do even better? So being people who create a culture where people are consciously not just embracing, they're creating change for betterment. So I think if you inculcate that every day, right? And certainly with times of crisis, because people look at the leader and how they respond, especially in crisis, be a model of positivity, enthusiasm, calm, and then when everyone's calm, what's great about this? What's the opportunity? What do we really want to? We can't change the change. What do we really want? What would empowered do? And let's move forward. I think just being a model of those practices for self, and then using those questions for their team to guide the expedition towards the ideal destination turns the team into one with a very strong growth mindset that focuses on making progress every day to make a difference to the mission. So anyway, I think hope that helps.
It does. Now, you've worked with leaders across the globe, and no doubt you've seen leaders doing this really well and leaders who perhaps could need some help. With the ones who are doing it really well, what do they have in common?
That's a great question. I think one, they're all very committed to the cause. Yeah, they're committed to the cause being the higher purpose of the organization, and of certainly they have this integrity of that pride of living up to that responsibility. So they're very proud of it, and they are very strong in being able to bring people along in the journey. So number one, that's one. They are a pattern that I notice in them is that they're very uncomfortable being comfortable. Sort of first base is you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So that they're good with that. But they're also, as I suggested earlier, they're comfortable being uncomfortable. And so, sorry, they're uncomfortable being comfortable. My bad. So whenever they're in comfort, they're always, because they know that their mission is to help people. If the people can start to see the workplace not just as a work to make money to pay the bills, nothing wrong with that. But if they can help people find greater meaning and purpose, right, to fulfill their highest potential in the journey called life, then why not? So for them, it's like, I want to make sure my teams are never in their comfort zone. They're growing purposefully, not stressed, but purposefully for their own benefit. So they'll spend time. They're all very often very strong coaches. And if they're not strong coaches, they will engage external coaches to coach their team. They know their team can benefit from growing. So for them, career and life integration is also very important. They're very interested in where they are for their people to be very proactive about their career development. They want to know where they want to be in 5 years, and even if it means losing them to another department, awesome. I'd rather do that than to lose them outside. And even if they were to lose them outside because where they are is not where they're meant to be, if they can help them in the 5 years that they have with them, and that's if you have 5 amazing years with an employee today, that's already amazing, right? Because the reality is about 30 to 60% of staff in the latest survey are quietly quitting. And that's not great for them, for themselves. It's not great for their families. It's not great for the organization. So for them, helping have the people during the time they're in the organization be at their inspired best to the best of their ability. I think that's another common pattern I'm seeing. So one, they're very strong with purpose. They're very clear about that. They're very committed. They're comfortable being vulnerable. They're uncomfortable being too comfortable. They're create that their purpose often is to help their people realize their highest potential. So seeing them be comfortable is also something that typically doesn't sit right with them. So they will continue to push and set goals, but they will coach. They will engage in helping them be at their best. And very often, I like to say that they're great models of self care as well. But very often, I find that the pattern with all of them is they work long hours. They're like, man, they like. But what people often don't see is their work life balance isn't doesn't come from 40-hour weeks. It may be weeks where it's like 60, 80 hours. But you will also see them running marathons. You also see them taking the 4 week to climb mountains with their families. Those are things, so they get their joy, their balance and all that sort of stuff. They demonstrate it through those means. And yet they're very important. They're very passionate about making sure their staff's self-care is prioritized as well. Because, your career is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And it's really about the quality of the energy and the emotions you bring into your work. If everyone for 8 hours every day can be empowered, inspired, filled with gratitude, courage, that always outperforms a team that's working 16-hour days where it's like meh, level 5 emotions or energy, right? Which is what I was in for 2 years. Wasn't the best performer. It didn't do me or my team much good at that time. But to get from satisfied to engage and preferably inspired is the key. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Love that. So if somebody remembered one thing from the conversation we've had today and also from your book, what would you like that to be?
Thank you. I think just remember that all that you need is already in you. You are perfect in your imperfection. Yeah, and just know that wherever you are, whether it's you deserve no less than every fulfillment in your life. Everyone has a different level. You don't have to be someone who is getting people to Mars or Oprah Winfrey, the most influential person in the world. You could be just an amazing grandmother or a person who the neighbor couldn't do without because you're dropping in every now and then to bring joy. But firstly, my key message is all you need is already within you now. Don't settle for anything less than fulfilling your highest potential in this lifetime to use your unique talents to make a difference. And yeah, live each and every day with gratitude and purpose and move forward. Yeah, with purpose.
Wonderful. I'm going to open the floor to the audience to see if anyone's got any questions. You can either pop your hand up and we'll get you to speak, or you can put it in the chat if you'd rather not talk. So I'll see if anyone's got anything they'd like to ask you, Dom.
Sure.
Carol.
Carol, how are you, Carol?
I'm good. Hi, Dom. Thank you so much for all the wonderful insights that you shared.
Oh, you're
Um, I'm
welcome.
I'm curious to understand, when you talk about implementing change in the organizations, quite
Mm-hmm.
often in a team, you'll find that there are people who would embrace the change very quickly. They understand it, they're on the bandwagon, they're off to the races with you. There's a bunch in the middle, perhaps, who, yeah, kind of a bit hesitant but willing to give it a go, and then they'll kind of will reserve judgment but we'll give it a go. But
Yes.
often there are a few, think of it as almost like laggards where they're
Mm,
resisting,
mm.
they're really holding back, they don't want to go ahead with the change. What's your advice to a team leader in terms of how you can ensure that everybody is going along on the journey, including the ones who are very resistant still, to the change, even though you have explained why and all the things that you said. Would be interested
Beautiful.
to hear, what's your advice on that?
Thank you, Carol. And that's a great question. You know, with every change, everyone navigates change differently. And so very often, like bell curve, right? Top 20%, they're like, yeah, about time, let's go. Celebrate the wins they've had, and, make sure that everyone is like, oh, I can see how this is working, because it's natural for anybody to, I wonder if this is going to work, right? And during the COVID response, when everyone was like, hey, get a jab, put a mask on, in 8 months, we'll be out of this. It's very often easy for people to say, look, it's not working. The needle doesn't seem to be moving, and yet it's so important as leaders, when we lead change, to observe what's working and to celebrate that. Hey, so and so did this, and as a result of that, was safe, for instance, right? Sharing the stories of progress is really important. I think the middle part, they're really important as well. They're the people who are, as long as they're bought in, they're not a barrier, they're not holding everyone back. You need the people who are executing and moving along. I think you're referring maybe to the 10-20% who, I always say that everyone has a reason in their life, right? And so, firstly, when you see someone like that, firstly, it should be pre-framed that you don't have to be one of the top 20%, and being a resistor holds everybody back, right? Don't sacrifice the 90% for the 10%. You better be very clear about what are the consequences of not changing, what are the benefits of changing, sell, influence, inspire. And I think that clarity around what are the consequences to our organization and to the individuals if we don't change, I think that also has to be clear, right? And then when that happens and people are still not embarking on it, my encouragement always is to lead with empathy, to check in to say, is everything okay? What are you dealing with? And it's totally okay for some people. They've gone from square peg and it's now a round hole, and they can't. When you talk about change, you go through the unfreeze, like a melting of the ice, square block, square cube, ice cube, and you're going into a very different shape, right? Let's say a round block of ice. You got to first melt, become water, and then refreeze, unfreeze, refreeze, right? So the unfreezing part is about explaining why and providing support. But for some people, the reality is the change is happening so fast, they either choose not, they're very comfortable being the old way, and there's other organizations that would be a perfect fit for them, other departments, perfect fit for them. Not everybody has to be, yeah, I'm super excited about where we headed. And so seek first to understand, because very often when people feel safe that someone is seeking first to understand, they tend to lean in more adaptable. It might be the influence point for them to shift. And yet, if they're like obstinate, no, I don't need this. I'm retiring in 2 years anyway. Who cares? Whatever. You can't get rid of me. You'll be put into the spotlight. There are some people who are like that. Do your best to coach. For me, very often when I'm involved in changes like this, and very often they're like, Dom, will you have this conversation with this human being here? They're just so resistant. And sometimes unkind words like their date would comes up. And I'm like, have you actually chatted with them to say, hey, what's going on with your life? And whenever I have conversations with these wonderful people and I build rapport with them, and I always ask them, and they're like, whatever, I'm okay with the change, but I'm comfortable with where I am, and I just refuse to take on that new role and blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm retiring in 2 years. I'm just using the example of retirement. It could be any other reason. I mean, 2 years anyway. And I'm like, absolutely fantastic. And 2 years from now, when you leave, how would you most like to be remembered? And none of them have said, geez, thank God that person is going, right? They're like, ironically, there's a time when they say, he made a difference somehow, or she made a difference. They say, what's one thing you could do to support the team during this time that you have here to move forward? You may not like the new role. What strengths can you bring to bring this forward? And I've seen changes in people actually just from that conversation, how would you most like to be remembered? Get them to see the bigger picture, get on the drone view and see bigger picture. Because very often people are so task oriented, they're so in the weeds, they're not seeing bigger picture. And I know that everyone wants, if given the opportunity, to know that they have made an impact through their presence. Yeah, it's
Thank
just that
you. Yeah.
sometimes they just need to be reminded.
Yeah, thank you, Don. That's wonderful. I love that
Yeah.
approach of empathy to really
Mm,
understand what's going on with them and how this is
yeah.
impacting them. And that question of
Yeah.
how would you most want to be remembered? That's a great one.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
analogy of the melting and refreezing, that's also wonderful. I mean, that's a great picture that I have in my mind that I will remember from
Yeah.
this. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, you can't get from one shape to the other shape without that melting of the ice
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
refreezing, right?
yeah.
But of course, the other important thing, Carol, is even with that best endeavor, there will be some people like, nope,
Yeah.
you can't do anything about me, and I'm just here, and and it's in Australia today, it's hard to let someone go, and the
Mm.
reality is the best leaders, they will not compromise the 99% for the 1%.
Yeah.
And so in the last resort, they will make the tough call. And but they always do it with compassion and with a deep appreciation that this is also done for your benefit because you're not happy here, really. And your time is your most important asset. If you've got 2 more years, find it somewhere else where you can find your joy because you deserve no less. It will be painful for that person, but that's a role of a leader to not be a people pleaser at the expense of making sure the team achieves the outcome. It's a tough gig. It's a tough gig. And yet, hey, that's what leaders are paid to do what they do, right? It's not easy.
Thanks, Don.
You're welcome. Thank you, Carol.
Wonderful. Have we got any other questions? We've probably got time for one more.
Kathy! Oh, Kathy's got a question.
Me, I'm going to ask you a question. I just love how everything that you've spoken about, so it's in alignment with where I'm going at the moment with my business, and I'm in my final term of doing some study in my later years. So I've decided I'm not going to retire. And so what you have said has really given me some more inspiration in line with what I've just been doing, because we had to write our own epitaph in class. So it's been in alignment. So I see this with what you've been talking about. It's not only just in your business and your workplace, but how to incorporate that into your own personal life. So you don't have to put on different hats. You can still put on the different hats.
Absolutely.
But it's like you become this whole person instead of this is my workplace and this is my home place. And even though there's some, my question is, how would you do that separation where you can still have your own self, like that trifold, your own personal self, your own spiritual self, and still bring that to the fore with your business life?
I think that's a great question. I'll draw back to one of the things that I admire most about leaders when I speak to people all around the world the last 20 years about what are attributes that makes one to be a leader. Very often authenticity comes up, right? And authenticity, integrity with your core values. And so I think the key thing is to understand what your that higher purpose is. I did that question of how would you most like to be remembered? Looking back, what's your legacy been? And understanding what your core values are, whether it's love and compassion and inspiration and growth, and just be a model of that, each and every day. Instead of asking what should I do, the default ego very often is survival, safe. Ask what would courage do, what would love do, what would joy do, whatever it is that represents your core values, that's authentic to it. What would that person prioritize, right? That will help me bring forward my mission and just do it. I think our work, I still remember the work of Stephen Covey who says the 5 L's, right? Purpose of life: to live, to laugh, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy. And way too many people come to work and it's like a place where I'm here to make a living, pay the bills, but we spend 40% at least of our lives at work. And it's a place where you can also laugh and love and learn and leave a legacy. If you commit to seeing that your life is about making a difference, our career, whether or not you're retired or non-retired, my wish for everyone is to continue to live purposefully, to have a higher purpose beyond themselves, to continue to push the brain to grow, to be stimulated, to make a difference. That's what gives us meaning and purpose, right? And that's not an age thing, it's just a decision thing. And so, anyway, I hope that helps, Kathy.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. You've summarised that really lovely. Lovely way to close up. Thank you.
Yes. Dom, so if people want to get in touch with you, whereabouts can they find you?
Oh, thank you. Always love. Find me on LinkedIn. You can always connect. I'm here to support in any way. Certainly, I about 12 months ago, in line with the mission to touch 1 million lives with our work before our time's up, we started an inspiring leadership podcast. I'm very used to being the center of attention in workshops and all that, but there was another dimension for me, just sitting behind a mic and listening and asking great questions and just learning and growing each and every day. So find me on Inspiring Leadership Podcast with Dominic Siow, or come and visit our website. And if you're interested in our public events and to be notified about that, you can sign up for our e-zine, where we put out regular snippets of value-added content, and also to stay abreast of any public events that we may be running that you'd like to take advantage of. Yeah.
Wonderful. And highly recommend the book. What I will do after this event is I'll send out an email to everybody with a link to the recording and also a link to where you can buy the book on Amazon.
Wow.
And look, thank you so much, Dom. It's been a real pleasure to host you, and seeing in the chat here that people are saying thank you. They found it really inspiring and so on. So I just want to say to people in closing, stay resilient, stay curious, and keep asking yourselves what's great about this. I think that's such a fabulous message. Thank you so much, Dom.
Thanks so much, Ros. Thanks, Kathy. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. Appreciate you. Making the most extraordinary day you deserve.